Hi, everyone, and welcome to Critical Conversations. My name is Karissa Dean. I am your host, and today I am so incredibly excited to have my personal acupuncturist, Krishna Avalon, who I have known since 2011, I think. She's a licensed acupuncturist, a subconscious therapist, PSYCH-K facilitator, internal family systems practitioner, breathwork guide. She has phenomenal breathwork. I love her breathwork. And she's led over 28,000 patients and clients to their health and wellness goals within the last 21 years. I'm so blessed to call her someone who has guided me. Krishna, thank you for being on. Say hello and tell us anything else you'd like our listeners to know about you.
No, I'm just so happy to be here finally with you and so happy to chat with you. And I'm loving your glasses. And yeah, we can just get into it.
Okay, let's get into it. So today I brought Karishna on. She and I have done, many a PSYCH-K sessions. And one of the favorite things I love to talk to her about, because she is an expert, is really the difference between the subconscious and the conscious mind. So Karishna, can you kind of give a definition to what I mean when I say subconscious and conscious?
Yeah, so we just have one mind, but in this way of explanation, there are two parts. The subconscious mind is where we hold our beliefs, our behaviors, our patterns, our habits, our feedback loops, our programs and our beliefs, our perceptions. It creates 97% of our lives, right? So if you are not working with your subconscious mind and you are repeating cycles over and over, if you're hitting resistance, if you're struggling, if you are just not understanding why things are so difficult, it's because your subconscious mind has beliefs and programs that are very contracted and limited. And everybody has them, and we're all programmed. It's just a matter of what programs are running your life. And you don't need to know what your limiting or self-sabotaging programs are. You can just really take a look at your life and look at where you're hitting resistance and struggle and where you just seem to be blocked and having a hard time moving on. And so for stress and trauma, which everybody has, the work that I do helps people create a new pathway in their mind to go in a new direction, working with the subconscious. And so that's neuroplasticity, and that's the brain's ability to change and have a new experience. So you really can teach an old dog new tricks if that dog wants to change. You can go in a new direction. And it's not that you can't do it with the conscious mind. It's probably going to take you a bazillion times longer. It's going to be a lot more difficult. And then it might not even be possible. So really the work that I do can be like the heavy hitter, deep excavating. Let's make things a lot simpler. All those behaviors and habits that you're having a really hard time shifting, do some PSYCH-K. And then you can use other things to reinforce the new pathway that you've created, like affirmations, like vision boards, like meditation, like journaling. And you can do that stuff and get to the subconscious. But again, it's going to take a lot longer because the subconscious likes repetition, and it likes repetition. So you might have to do something like 5 years, right? Before you actually are able to make a shift that you could do a lot quicker with like whatever you're called to do, whether it's PSYCH-K or EMDR or hypnotherapy or emotion code. The thing about PSYCH-K that's really cool, and I don't love the name, but it stands for psychology and kinesiology. It was created by a psychologist, is that you not only get to peacefully unattach from your trauma and stresses, past, present, or future, but in PSYCH-K, you actually get to create new programs. And so for me, that's how I was most drawn to this work. For one, it's simple. You're conscious, unlike hypnotherapy, where sometimes you're kind of asleep or in an altered state. But then also, unlike those modalities, you get to create a new program based off of what do you want to be experiencing in the world? What lens, what perception do you want to have? And so just like the basics would be like somebody who does not feel safe being in the world, or somebody who believes they don't have enough, compared to I am more than enough. I am safe right now in this moment. I mean, those are going to be totally different experiences from each other, right? And so you can try to talk yourself into I am safe, talk yourself into I am enough, but you're just trying to do that with your conscious mind, and that's going to take a heck of a lot longer.
Yeah, and I love how you break down that PSYCH-K is the psychology and the kinesiology, because a lot of us, if we're just talking about affirmations and we use the example, I am safe, you might be able to write that down and have like a psychological understanding, but there might be physical resistance in the body, right? Like a lot of the work that you do in the PSYCH-K, it's like maybe your brain can conceptualize it, but the body is still holding on to a piece of trauma that doesn't allow that new belief that you want so deeply to have exist. Can you tell us a little bit more about how, like, if we're just using this example, I am safe, how the body kind of locks it in?
Yeah, I love that question because I can say that I've never really been asked it or in this way. But yeah, our bodies hold our stories. And so a lot of times when people are sitting in what we call a balance in PSYCH-K, the shift, what we call the shift, which is the goal, is experienced either physically, mentally, or emotionally. And so you're sitting in the balance, focusing on the stress. That's what you're supposed to do. Focusing until you notice that shift. And for a lot of people, it's physical. So for me, when I'm sitting in a balance to transform stress, it's often very physical. And I feel my body release a bunch of tension. It might even move around. A lot of people describe it as like an energy or a tightness or even nausea or something clearing and leaving the body. And it is because our bodies hold our stories. So, just to your point, yes, with your conscious intellectual mind, which only creates 3% of your life, if the subconscious creates 95 to 97, but your body will still be holding on to this story. And also, it's the subconscious mind's job to keep you, quote unquote, safe. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's like a helpful belief for you, but the job of your subconscious is to keep you safe. And what that usually means is what's familiar. So it might just be familiar for you to be in fight and flight. It might be familiar for you to always be like stressed out and looking for danger and what's wrong. And so to be without that can feel unsafe to somebody. And so sometimes I'm creating balances with people that are like, it's safe for me to relax. It's safe for me to be in the present moment. It's safe for me to rest. Because they literally don't have a reference point for that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so many people, they don't even know what that would look like, right? And so you help them in the process, and you and I have done this together for so many different things. I was like trying to count how many PSYCH-K things we've done, and I'm like, I don't even know, because it's like, it's not just about, oh, I have this desire to feel safe, but like my body and my head and everything needs to connect with I am safe. And so it's like you help us identify the balance that's going to get us closer to our goal, right? So when we're talking about this new pathway, can you tell us like what it is that you are picking apart, as you know, because basically you sit down, you know, similar to what I do in coaching, you sit down and we just talk. You know, what are your goals? What's the outcome you're wanting to create? And so you talk about this new pathway. How do you help people find the pathway?
I love that question so much because this is where it's going to help you to feel connected to whoever you're working with. Just because someone does PSYCH-K or does acupuncture or practices IFS doesn't mean they're intuitive. And it doesn't mean that they know how to read your energy or be the facilitator for you. And so it's about reflective listening. It's about being intuitive for me. That is my special sauce, because when it comes time to what we call a goal statement balance, helping people come up with those words and really reflecting back to you what you just told me you want and finding the words that can encompass a lot of that, that's alchemy and that's magic. And so when you feel very connected to that new program that you're going to create, I mean, that's really special and that's really powerful. And when I read
Yeah.
back the words that someone comes up with and be like, is this what you want? And they're lit up and their eyes are big or they're emotional, that's the one.
Yeah, I remember many, many times you're like, you're not like doing anything. Like you kind of lean in and you're like, that's not it. And I'm like, no, that's not it. Let's keep talking. And so sometimes I think it takes a while to know what you want because our brain is so pre-programmed to keep us safe, right?
That and like you and I, and mostly me with all my people, like we actually get there pretty quickly. Like it doesn't even take that much breaking down or honing in or fine tuning or tweaking a goal statement to even just a word like I am safe compared to I feel safe. Like I'm a feeler, I'm emotional. I feel safe. And so I might pick up on something like that and just give you a couple of options just like you would in
Yeah.
coaching to somebody you're working
Yeah.
with to just help them get
Yeah.
to their best goal.
Exactly. And it's so interesting too because I remember early on in my personal development journey, affirmations seem to be like this big buzzword, right? And it's like, write all these affirmations. And I'm like, they would have you like write down, I am wealthy. But I would like write it down and I'd be like, but this is bullshit. I'm just lying to myself. And like I would feel the discord in my body. And so tell us a little bit more about when you say, these I am statements and like what's your opinion on the I am statements and how are they best effective? Because I think a lot of people are going to listen to this and they're going to be inspired to look at what their statements are that they're writing. And so tell me more about this from your perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And for some people, you don't want to come up with a goal statement that you're like, this is bullshit. But you get to the words that you're like, yeah, that's what I want. And so for some things like affirmations, sure, of course, thinking positively is great. Of course, like what you think is going to broadcast a frequency. Of course, feeling grateful is the highest kind of experience you can have, really. But at the same time, if you don't have those beliefs or programs in the subconscious mind, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
And again, you're going to have to use these affirmations that may or may not feel like bullshit for you for a really long time before you might see shifts happen. So that's why the law of attraction doesn't work for a lot of people. And that's why affirmations, sure, they're nice, but they're not always the helpful thing.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because, if it's not something that you can believe, which is so fun for me to like uncover in coaching is like, but like, do you believe it? Do you feel it? It's like, I love looking at people and being like, I see your body, like you're physically, I see you're reacting, so you're saying one thing, but your body is telling me a different thing. And so this pathway that you're creating in PSYCH-K and this subconscious is really about changing your beliefs, which I know you talk about a lot all the time. So in your work, is there a thread, like a commonality as far as like a belief that you see most common within people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when people tell me where they're stressed out or what they want, it usually comes down to feeling worthy and deserving of this, that, or the other, whether it's freedom, which I think what money would represent for me, or safety or stability. Like I deserve to feel safe. I am worthy of safety and stability. I am worthy of being held and cared for by others. Think of all of us women, especially who hustle, 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 or those of us who've been raised in religious programming that teaches us as women, or like me, a woman of color, that like, oh yeah, you need to give and give and give and give and give and give to receive love and acceptance, to be a good person, to be a good daughter, mother, family member, wife, whatever it is. And you need to constantly give to others to prove that you're worthy of being a good person. I was never taught to say no. It was always like, do things you don't want to do to be a good person. And so a lot of that is the programming that I get to help people undo and go in a different direction from. So being worthy and deserving of rest, of love and acceptance exactly as you are. And I get to speak to a lot of coaches too who are like maybe having troubles getting their business going because you're trying to like be in this way on the internet. But like if you haven't expanded the value of your own voice or being deserving of being seen as you are, there's going to be a conflict, and then you can feel that. Someone like me can feel that as a resonance and a frequency in somebody's scrolling, right? And so I really have mad respect and like admiration and a little bit of jealousy for people who don't have to do that kind of hustle because they just already are, right? And a lot of times, like the
Right.
best business model for me, like the best thing for my business has always been to actually get off of the internet, get off the grid, go out into nature, do myself in a way that is like most nourishing, resources my own energy, connects me to nature, which is my God. And then I'll come back, turn on my phone, and like my schedule will be booked out for weeks and weeks and weeks. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what your question was, but those are the foundational things that I think that people come to me for, is trusting themselves,
Yeah.
feeling safe to be who they are, believing they're worthy and deserving of love and acceptance as they are. Maybe I get to work a lot with people with relationships, like having healthy relationships, being able to say no without guilt, having clear
Yeah.
boundaries, being able to empathize but not have to carry with other people's stuff as a way to love. And so all kinds of balances around transforming the stress of those ways of being, and then also creating new programs to have the relationships and the life that we really want to have. And then they're very available to us. It doesn't have to take 10, 15, 20 years of talk therapy. Like you can just actually do a few sessions of something that is really aligned for you, and it can be so much easier than that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, so we're talking about like really ultimately permission to be yourself and the validation you might need, but it comes from the self identification of like, this is me, this is who I am. And I think, your point to the most successful I am in my business is when I come back and recalibrate to myself by doing what serves me. And I think this is where, the coaching industry is so sticky because it is kind of created its own pyramid scheme in a way where we're looking at people on the top. Oh, this is how they did it, so let me do it that way. And then we're like seeing this ripple effect. Whereas the people who are really doing work that is benefiting the collective, right? Because you and I both have, I think, hold the same belief that the collective consciousness rises when we take care of the self. And so I think, this feeling and this knowing all comes back to the permission to be yourself, to know your authentic self, to honor your authentic self, and to kind of shut down the noise. And those are the conversations I love to have with my clients, and that's why like my tagline for my coaching business is choose you, because I think that the noise is so big. You may not give yourself the permission to turn off your phone because your conditioning or the way that you're seeing everything presented to you in our world is that you always have to be available. But the reality is when we figure out what works for us and we calibrate to that, that's when we live in our zone of genius, and the universe is like, boom, here you go. Like, do more of that. Take care of yourself more.
Exactly.
So when we're talking about, and I'm just thinking of like my own experience with you and PSYCH-K, and even just our time together. I mean, really, you're like, for me, you're like my confidant, my therapist, my coach, my acupuncturist, like you're everything to me. And I so appreciate you. In our work, I know that there are pieces of the PSYCH-K that aren't mine. They're of a past life. they're projections from my mom. How much is ours and how much is our ancestors or others?
Yeah, another brilliant question. I mean, I'm not continually, but I would say often enough lately, I am clearing scarcity and lack from all systems, components, and levels of being, from my womb, whether it's a womb steam, whether it's a subconscious belief that I don't have to carry that anymore. So it's huge. I mean, we're all carrying a whole bunch of stuff that's not ours and has been passed down through our DNA and through our karma or lineage or whatever you want to call it. So that's why I do a lot of work, I think, with people around boundaries, for being able to connect to the clarity and brilliance of their own energy, from being able to let go. And that doesn't mean that you don't care or you're a bad person. It just means you're actually present and available for your clients, your family, for your people in a more filled up and whole way. And, that's pretty relatively new conditioning. So new programming.
Yeah.
And again, you can journal about all that stuff and you can make your lists. I know a lot of people do magical work with creating their lists and their goals, but I do find from my own experience and all the people that I guide that, like, PSYCH-K or whatever it is that you want to do the heavier lifting and then use your journaling to reinforce. I mean, it's just going to be way easier. I'm like all about easy and simple. And that's part of why I do love PSYCH-K as a process.
Yeah. I mean, so I'll do a vulnerable share. So we did a balance, I don't even know, 6 months ago. And it was all around me being safe, knowing I can take care of myself, right? I don't remember the exact goal statement, but it was basically off the premise of my whole life, I had been conditioned to need somebody next to me in order to be successful, right? So it was like I had my parents, I had my grandparents, like they were part of my success. And then it's like I had Nigel, who was like, he is part of my success. And so I really wanted these independent legs. And so I remember coming to you and we did this goal statement around, I can do it. Like, I don't need anyone else. Like, I can lead myself. I can trust myself. I'm enough by myself to get what I desire. And I can't even tell you what has transpired since then, right? And it's because we kind of just cut through all the shit and we go straight into it. And then it's like my meditations, my visualizations, my journaling, my, being out in nature, like all of that just compounds on the subconscious. And so it's like, instead of fighting through these 5 different methods, right? It's like I have 6 and 1 is 90% of it. And then the rest is just sprinkles on top of the cupcake. So when you're talking to your, people who don't understand PSYCH-K, what is the way that you help them understand? Because I get it.
Right.
But how do you help people get it?
I would ask them where they feel stuck, what stress is taking up the most of their headspace. Even if it's annoying and it's like something your neighbor said to you that you can't stop thinking about, or if it's your deepest, darkest trauma, doesn't matter. Whatever it is, what's taking up the most of your headspace. Do you want to go in a new direction from that? Would you like to peacefully unattach from that and just have a new experience so that you're not triggered? You're not clenching up. You're not having an anxiety attack. You're not nauseous. You're not avoiding it. So that you can think about something and be like, oh yeah, that sucks. But you just go on about your day. You're not all caught up and enmeshed with it. So as an experience, that might be how I describe it. And then I often just, Bruce Lipton, one of my teachers who wrote The Biology of Beliefs, he does compare us to computers. I don't love comparing us to technology, but if we are all running programs, because we are, the subconscious is the hard drive. And that's where all of life and programs come from. And the conscious mind is the keyboard that you're just typing information into. It's important and it's necessary, and talk therapy does save lives, but most talk therapy is just working with the conscious mind, and you're kind of perpetuating the same stuff over and over. For a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people have felt stuck and plateaued in talk therapy. They still feel bad. They're still triggered. They're still anxious. They're still angry. And they've been in talk therapy for 15 years. Well, there are other ways. There are other ways if you want to move on, if you want to have a different experience. That's what PSYCH-K is for. It's for creating neuroplasticity so that you can have a new experience.
Yeah, I think you said something that I'd love to touch on before we wrap up is if you want to have a new experience. And I think that this is kind of like the key of what keeps us stuck as a society. And, it's like we can see it in the history books of how we're just repeating old cycles. So what are your thoughts around, how much of our world, even just what we're seeing and experiencing and what we're not seeing and what we're not experiencing is because we're stuck in these cycles and we don't want to go in a new direction.
Exactly. So much of it, Krissa. So much. A lot of people, most people I know, myself included, if I'm noticing that I'm grumpy or giving my power away or stuck in something, I'm like, where am I still playing a victim in this story right now? Or am I giving my power away? What is the lesson I'm trying to master as a spiritual being? And so, yes, a lot of it comes from old stories replaying. And the lens that's being fed to us from whatever we watch or scroll or listen to. It's part of why I don't read the news as a survival strategy. And I used to feel real crappy about that and like shame myself for it. But it's honestly a survival strategy. And I need to feed myself things that make me want to live and live for the beauty and love that is available to me in this world. And that is way more than enough. It helps me. It helps my daughter. It helps my community, helps me serve the people who come to me for help. And I really just pay attention to energy, what comes to me, what is the anecdote needed, what's the medicine needed. That's my service to the world. I know that was a tangent, but a lot of it comes from, just like you said, stories on repeat.
Yeah, and I think, the brain, we know scientifically, keeps us safe by keeping us in known patterns. And so really what we're talking about in this whole episode is opening yourself up. If you have been journaling for years, if you have been meditating, to quote unquote manifest money, and you still are in the same situation with your finances, like there's other modalities that are available to you, and your brain wants to keep you safe, and the world wants to convince you that, oh, you should just keep doing it this way, like keep doing it this way. This is how we do it, right? This is how we do it. But there's more available to us. And I think that the beauty of what you bring to people in the healing space is a simple pathway to not only heal yourself, but be a better self for the world to start healing.
And you can
I would love to go ahead.
Oh no, and you can just go in a new direction. I mean, sometimes people just don't think about or realize that there are other options. And that's also what PSYCH-K offers. It offers a new perception where all of a sudden you're sitting in that balance and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I could do that instead. And it can be that simple.
Yeah. I love the simplicity of it. Obviously, like, you're somebody I admire, and so I love, the way in which you offer it. What is one thing you would love people to walk away with knowing?
Really, you are a limitless creator. I think that you are here on planet Earth as a human being to know the divinity of yourself, the power of yourself, to know how to love and be loved, to experience as much beauty as possible. I don't think that you're here to suffer and play small. And if I can outgrow the things that I've outgrown, you definitely can too.
I love that. Krishna, where can people find you?
Just my website, honestly. I'm an OG like that. And then I'm on Instagram stories when I feel like it. And then sometimes people reach out for various things on LinkedIn. But yeah, say hi. I love connecting. I just don't love being on the internet all the time.
Same, same. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I'll make sure everyone has the link to your website in the show notes.